Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, we're going to get started with our lunch program, and before we dine, we're going to hear from our keynote speaker today. We're very excited to have the Honorable Julian Castro to join us today for our 9th Subiendo Academy. So Secretary Castro, thank you very much for being with us today. We're very excited to have you. To properly introduce our students, to properly introduce our speaker, we like to give the opportunity to our students to have the public speaking opportunity. It's something I still get very nervous in doing, so it's nice to start practicing at an early age, to be in front of a live audience and share certainly what we want and goals for the program. So Mark Anthony Rivera is going to be here to introduce our keynote speaker, so help me in welcoming Mark Anthony.
Julian Castro is the Dean's Distinguished Fellow and Fellow of the Davila Chair in International Trade Policy at the LBJ School of Public Affairs. Previously, he served as the 16th United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Barack Obama from 2014 to 2017 and Mayor of San Antonio from 2009 to 2014. Castro, a native Texan, born and raised in San Antonio, launched his public service career in 2001, becoming San Antonio's youngest councilman. He was elected to mayor in 2009 and re-elected in both 2011 and 2013. During his tenure as mayor, Castro focused on attracting well-paying jobs in 21st century industries and expanding education opportunities across the city. Castro launched into the national arena with his keynote address, the first by a Latino, at the 2012 Democratic National Convention. In 2014, Castro accepted President Barack Obama's offer of the position of the United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and upon confirmation, served in that role in 2017. Join me in welcoming Joaquin Castro.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good to see you. Where are you from?
San Antonio.
From San Antonio. All right. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, first of all, Mark Anthony, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. He's from San Antonio. Who else is from San Antonio? All right. We got a few folks. I know that we have folks from all over the state of Texas. Is anybody from Houston? How about Dallas? El Paso? You got a good El Paso crowd. Anybody from the Valley? There you go, the Valley's loud today. All right. How about anywhere else in East Texas or West Texas? How about right here in Austin? Who's here from around Austin? Y'all are a little quiet today. Well, wherever you're from, first of all, let me say a huge congratulations to all of you for the success that y'all have already had and the fact that you're here in this program. I understand this is your second day here and the first day where y'all are really going through the program, and so I hope that everybody's enjoying themselves and that you get a lot out of this experience. Mark Anthony, you mentioned at the very end, I actually have a twin brother, Joaquin. Some of y'all may know my twin brother Joaquin is in Congress, and he likes to go around telling people that the way you tell us apart is that I'm a minute uglier than he is. But that's not true. If you ever see him, tell him that that's wrong. Joaquin and I grew up on the west side of San Antonio with my mother and my grandmother. And my grandmother had come when she was 7 years old, along with her younger sister, from Mexico because their parents had died. And the nearest relatives that they had were here, were in San Antonio. And she never finished elementary school because they took her out. And because of that, she worked as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter for her whole life. And I can remember being a senior in high school, and on April 3rd, 1992, running out to the mailbox with my brother and finding in the mailbox these two packets. We had been applying to college that year, and had looked up U.S. News and World Report and seen like the top 10 or 11 schools, and we got fee waivers to apply to them, and we applied to all of them. And on April 3rd, 1992, we found these two packets in the mailbox. And I have to say, how many of y'all have applied to college? I think a lot of the folks here are juniors or rising seniors, so that's coming up. You generally want to get a packet and not a letter, because if you get a letter, it could be a thank you but no thank you letter. So we ran in with our packets and we ripped them open, and the letter inside said, "Congratulations and welcome to the Stanford class of 1996. And I wish that I had one of the cell phone cameras that all of us have today, so that I could have taken a picture of my grandmother's face to see how happy she was, because she never could have imagined that kind of opportunity for herself, or even for my mother, or for us. And that's what I think about, that moment when I think of y'all. I wanted to first say that I'm happy to be here because I know that in your own families that you have come a long way, that your families have made tremendous sacrifices over the years and over the generations so that you can be here in this moment with this opportunity and with the future that you have ahead of you. And so congratulations on all of that. The second reason that I'm happy to be here is because our country needs you today more than ever before. You know, a few months ago, I was in San Francisco, and have any of y'all been on those fancy elevators these days that have like a video screen on them? It looks like generic cable that comes out. Well, this generic cable program was playing, and it said that it was Republic Day in India. And in India, Republic Day is sort of their national day of pride. And I remembered that 5 years earlier I had been in India because one of the sister cities of San Antonio that I was mayor of at the time was this city called Chennai. And while we were watching the Republic Day ceremonies, one of the government officials there told me that there were 400 different engineering programs in the state of Tamil Nadu that Chennai sits in alone. And it reminded me that today, that we live in this world in which brain power is the new currency of success, that the United States is competing against and collaborating with countries all over the globe that are producing tons and tons of young people with the talent and the intelligence and the ambition to succeed and to spark the kind of ideas and companies and products that are going to drive prosperity in the years to come. And so what that means for the United States of America, for our country, is that we need everybody's talent. And we especially need people like you, folks who are intelligent, who are ambitious, who are well on their way to making a mark in whatever career you choose to go into. And so I'm happy to be around so many people that our country truly is counting on to make sure that we can prosper in the 21st century the way that America has been able to prosper in the years past. So I thought today that I would share with you, as y'all begin this Subiendo program, a little bit about my own experience, just 4 quick moments, and then tell you what I learned from them. And I hope that you'll take that with you as you go forward. I mentioned that my brother and I grew up with my mother and my grandmother on the west side of San Antonio, and we went to the public schools our whole life, in the Edgewood Independent School District and then the San Antonio Independent School District. And I remember this one day sitting in English class in the 8th grade. I know that was only 3 years ago for y'all if you're juniors, but it was a long time ago for my brother and me. So I was sitting in the middle of 8th grade class, and there was this guy that was maybe 2 rows behind me, and he kept talking while the teacher was trying to teach. And at one point near the end of the class, the teacher stopped the class, and she said, "Young man, you know, you can get away with that while you're an 8th grader, but next year when you're in high school, there's no way that you're going to be able to do, you know, what you're doing. There's no way you're going to be able to keep messing around like that and still graduate." I said, "Oh, okay." So I think he started behaving. I remember that, and then I remember a few years later being in college or being in high school and hearing about college, that college was so tough that you had to study 3 hours for every 1 hour that you were in class. And then I remember being in college and hearing that law school, when I was applying to law school, was so bad that students would go into the library and tear pages out of the books so that other students, their classmates, couldn't get their homework done or their class assignments done, and they would do better than those other students. And then I remember being in law school and getting ready to go into the working world to become a lawyer, and hearing that working in a law firm was so tough that you didn't have time for anything else except billing hours. You had no social life, no opportunity to do anything except stay in the office and bill hours. And the thing is that high school was a little bit harder than middle school, but basically, if you had done well in middle school, you could do well in high school. And college was a little bit harder than high school, but it didn't take 3 hours to study for every 1 hour that you were in class. And law school was a bit tougher than college had been, but the people were fine. Nobody was tearing out pages of any books. And the law firm required a lot of attention and a lot of hard work, but it wasn't nearly the disaster that I'd been led to believe. What I learned from that was that oftentimes, when we are getting ready to go to the next level in life, oftentimes we freak ourselves out about that next level. Whether it's when you're in middle school going to high school, or when you're in high school going on to college, or college going on to the working world or to grad school. And I've found that 99% of the time those myths aren't true. And that if you keep on doing what you've been doing that has led you to be successful, that you should have every single confidence that you're going to continue to be successful in the years to come. Don't let the idea that the next level is so much harder cause you to shy away from continuing to reach as high as you can for success. The fact that you're here, that you've already succeeded, that says more than anything else about your potential. Believe in yourself. Don't ever let yourself question whether you belong somewhere, because the answer is that you do, and you've already shown that. The second experience is from a few years later, the first party that I went to in college. I think we have a few college students here. Is anybody in college? Yeah, they're like, hiding right now. Y'all don't go to any parties, I'm sure. So my brother and I went to Stanford together, and we started school. And I remember maybe a few weeks after college started, I went to the first party that they had, at least that I knew about, and it was at a dorm right next door to the dorm that I lived in. Right? And so as soon as I got to the party, the first thing that I saw was a keg of beer and 2 stacks of those red Solo cups. You know those red Solo cups? Plastic cups? And I remember that it was the first time that I ever felt what people would describe as peer pressure. Like the need to belong to the crowd, the need to fit in. And I remember that I went to where the keg and the red Solo cups were, and I got a cup, and then I went to the restroom, and I filled the cup with water. And I walked around all night at that party, every now and then sipping from the cup, pretending to drink beer, but I was actually drinking water. I remember that because I very rarely drink. There was a time when Joaquin and I were growing up that my mother was drinking too much. And as a 9 or 10-year-old, that scared me, when she and other people would get drunk. And so I just never started drinking. But that day, I felt so much like I had to fit in that I changed really who I was. And what I learned from that, because that was the last time that I ever did anything like that, what I learned from that is that you should always believe in yourself enough to be yourself, to be who you are. And I don't mean whether it's just whether you drink or not or do other things. I mean about what you believe, about your background and being proud of who you are. Just be yourself. And I learned that if you are yourself, that it allows other people to like you and be your friend and love you even for who you are. And it also allows you to have deeper friendships because people really are around you because they know you. And it allows them to be themselves also. And the relationships that you can form will be deeper. I say that because y'all are about to embark in the next year or so on a period of your lives that is a lot about transition and change. And sometimes that change is good, but sometimes that change can be bad. As you navigate that, always remember who you are, where you come from, the people that love you, and believe in yourself enough to be who you are. The third moment I wanted to share with you was from about 5 years after that. I graduated from college in 1996, and my brother and I had gotten into law school, but our grandmother had passed away a few months before, and so we decided to defer a year. Like law schools and other grad schools will often let you put off going. You know, you get admitted, but then you can put off actually starting for a year or 2 years. And we wanted to come back home to San Antonio to be with our mother and to spend some time back home after we had been away at college. And the question was, well, what was I going to do with my time? I had to do something and make some money and get ready for law school. And so I was a permanent substitute teacher at my old high school, Jefferson High School. On the day that I turned 22, the principal called me into her office and asked if I would take over these 3 classes, these 3 high school classes. And she said, I think that one of the teachers had a nervous breakdown and would I take over their classes. And one of the classes had 37 people, one of the classes had 38, and one of them had 39. So these were huge classes that we had. And on the 3rd or 4th day that I was there, I turned around to write something on the blackboard. You know, we still use blackboards instead of whiteboards. And some guy from the back of the room like rolled up 3 or 4 pages of loose leaf paper and he chunked it at the back of my head and it hit me. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to like turn around and try and figure out who had done that and send them to the vice principal's office, or to pretend like it never happened and save my dignity, which is, I think, what I tried to do. But I remember that I would go home every day and feel like I had to take a 3-hour nap because I was so exhausted from the day trying to manage that classroom and get folks to learn and to buckle down and to concentrate. Maybe some of y'all know the experience of being in classrooms like that. And you know how in life, if you've been a good student, or for those of y'all that are a little bit older, if you've been a good supervisor somewhere, a good employee, people will come up to you and they'll tell you, oh, you were such a good student, or sometimes these days people will tell me, oh, you know, you were such a great council member when you represented us, or a good mayor. None of those students has ever come up to me in the years since then and said, you know what, you were a great teacher, because I was terrible. But what it taught me was the value of always being prepared for what you do. You see, the problem was that I really wasn't prepared to teach. I didn't have a teaching certificate, and yet I was a permanent substitute teacher in there every single day like a regular teacher. I didn't know how to manage the classroom. I didn't know how to effectively convey a lesson, how to get folks to, pay attention again if they were acting up. And so a lot of it was just spent wasting everybody's time. I don't want to overdo it. I hope they learned something. But my point is, always be prepared. When you go to college in a year or so, that first year that you go into is the most important year. Make sure that your first priority is always to do the work, to study, to understand what you need to know, and then to do the hard work of succeeding. There is no substitute in life for actually putting in the work and being prepared. And no matter what happens, that will serve you well in the years to come. The good news is that if y'all are here, that means that you understand that you've been prepared for a long time, and that you care enough about your future to invest the time and do the work that's necessary to succeed. And then finally, I wanted to share a moment from much more recently. From 2014 to 2017, as Mark Anthony mentioned, I had the privilege of serving as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for President Obama. And basically, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as the name might suggest, is in charge of working with states and cities to create greater housing opportunity and help revitalize communities that are distressed and that need it. And so during my time there, those 2.5 years that I served, I had the chance to travel to 100 different cities in 39 states. You can imagine that I got to see a lot of different places and meet interesting people and understand what was working and what didn't seem to be working. And I'll never forget that on one of those visits, I had the chance to meet a gentleman at the site of housing that was being renovated for the purpose of providing housing to veterans who had been homeless. One of the things the Obama administration was working hard on was trying to eliminate veteran homelessness, because a large number of the people that you see on the street, unfortunately, are veterans. And the gentleman that I met said that he was the developer of the project. In other words, he was in charge of creating that project, creating those housing units. He said that he was a veteran, and that at one time he had been homeless too. And so this project that he was working on was his way of making sure that other people could be blessed with the same opportunity for a second chance that he had been, so that they could get back up on their feet and they could live a good life. And I'll never forget that. And what it taught me, and really what it reminded me, was that all of us, in different ways, should always find a way to give back. All of you already, I think, in life have been blessed with intelligence and with success, and you're going to see a lot more of that in the years to come. I hope that no matter what you end up doing, that you'll always find a way to make sure that other people can have the same kind of success that you're having and that you're going to have even more of in the years to come. And the thing is that doesn't have to be through something like running for office, although a lot of people do. It can also be through a nonprofit that you volunteer for, or through your church that you volunteer for, do work with, through your neighborhood association, through the company that you work for, that you own. You can make a contribution to ensuring that other people have the kind of great opportunity that you'll have in the years to come. And so I hope that y'all will always remember that. And finally, let me just say how proud I am of each and every one of you. If we had had this kind of program a couple of generations ago, I'm convinced that we would have had even more young people of color that were well on their way to great success in our state. But the good thing is that we do have this Subiendo program now, and you're here. I hope that you'll take advantage of it, and I hope for you that in all of the places that life is going to take you, to college, to the working world, to crossing the stage and getting your diploma and then getting your degree later, to one day watching your own children cross the stage and get their degree, in all of the years to come, I hope that you'll always believe in yourself, that you'll always remember where you came from, that you'll always surround yourself with people who love you and believe in you, and help ensure that you provide opportunity for others as well. And if you do that, I'm convinced that you can be part of ensuring that we make the 21st century one that all Texans and Americans can be proud of. Congratulations, and I hope you all have a wonderful program. Okay. Oh, sure, yeah, I'm going to. Yeah.
If we have any students who would like to ask any questions, they can come line up here behind the mic and speak. Say your name and then ask your question. See if we have any first takers.
All right, somebody's got to be the brave first one.
You said you went to Stanford, right? How was like managing the fact that you were so far from your family? Because they were in San Antonio and you were in Stanford. So like communication with your mom and your grandma, like how did you manage that?
Yeah. And what was your name?
Jesus.
Jesus. Thank you very much, Jesus, for the question. The question was that my brother Joaquin and I went to Stanford, and how did we manage being so far away from home, and you know, our relationship with our mother and our grandmother. It was tough in the beginning. You know, I remember that we started, my first day on campus was Thursday, September 24th, 1992, and I remember that Joaquin and I took a flight back home and showed up on our mom's doorstep on Thursday, October 29th, 1992, and like, because we missed home so much. It was the first time that we'd ever been away. We had never been to Stanford before. We really didn't know, you know, maybe one or two other people there. And that was even me having a brother. I mean, I had my best friend and my brother there with me, which was sort of cheating because most people don't have that. But I think that got better over time. By the time we got into the second part of the year, and then certainly by the second year, you know, we got adjusted to it, and we met new friends, and the university was great in the dorms about kind of facilitating people meeting each other and folks getting to get into new activities, and we would talk all the time to my mom and my grandmother. We came back for the Christmas break and spent as much time, you know, as we could afford to come back to San Antonio. These days, for y'all, the thing is that it's so much easier to communicate than it ever has been before, right? I mean, people are FaceTiming or they're using some other app. And so that time and distance between the people that you love and that love you has just been shortened so much. And I would encourage y'all, when you'll go off, to take advantage of that and just know that just because you're a long way away doesn't mean that you're gonna not be able to, you know, see your mom's face or your grandmother's face or your father's face every night if you want to. I think in our community, in the Latino community, that there's been this tendency oftentimes that's called undermatching, where people that could go on to some of these Ivy League schools, for instance, they decide not to. And they, you know, they might still go to a great school, but they also pass up great opportunities. I hope that the folks in this room will not do that, that you will always try to reach a level higher than you even think is possible. And when it comes to getting through it, you know, take advantage of the opportunity that we have these days to communicate more closely with loved ones, and just know that it's going to get better. And also find a support system around you of friends, of folks who share your common interests and that can build a community, that you can build a community with there in, you know, in your new place. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Sarah, and I saw that you said that you went to Stanford for law. Is that correct?
What's that?
You went to Stanford for law?
I went to Stanford for college and then Harvard for law school.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of, it's something that I've been interested in. So I wanted to ask, how did you do it regarding the tuition, the expenses, everything, especially moving out of state to go to college?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what was your name?
Sarah.
Sarah, thank you for the question. Sarah's question relates to how did we afford being able to go to Stanford. So the year that we applied, my mother had made about $19,000 or $20,000 that year, and my grandmother was getting a few $100s in a Social Security check. And so I told about the day on April 3rd that we got the acceptance letter. Everybody was so happy, and then a couple of weeks later we got the bill, and everybody was sad. At the time, Stanford cost between $27,000 and $28,000 per person per year. And so there was no way that, that my mother and grandmother could afford that opportunity for us. The way that we were able to do it was that we got Pell Grants, and we got Perkins loans, and there was federal work study, and there were Stafford loans back then. And then there were grants that the university gave. At the end of the day, I remember doing a tally, and it would have cost me more to go to UT than it did to go to Stanford. So I think I left Stanford owing about $18,000, and for some reason my brother only owed $11,000. I don't know how in the world that happened. I think if y'all hear anything about this financial aid discussion, hear this part, which is that number one, there is a lot of financial aid out there, both grants and loans. And with regard to the loans, it's not like they show up on your doorstep right after you graduate and they say, oh, where's my whatever $1,000? These loans are structured so that you have 10 years or more to pay them off. And so it's when you start working. I think at the end of the day, though, what we need is that we need in the United States to make at least the first 2 years of college free for young people, because that's just what's required today for people to compete and get good jobs. And so my hope is that in the years to come, we're going to be able to reduce significantly the cost of going to a college or to university. In the meantime, just know that there is significant financial aid there, and that loans that you take out don't have to be paid back immediately. You pay them off over a number of years. Right?
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kezia Lopez, and my question is, how do you suggest encouraging, especially Latino students or just minority students in general, that don't have the precedent of their parents going to college and that may not be excelling so much in their academics because of that? How would you suggest to encourage them or maybe change their mentality?
And you said that don't have a parent that went to college? Mm-hmm. Okay, and what was your name again?
Kezia.
Kessia? All right, thank you for the question. I imagine that many of y'all, how many of y'all would be the first in your family to go to college? Raise your hand if you'd be the first in your family. So many of the folks here. I was fortunate, my mother had gone to college, but I do think that it's harder if a young person is growing up without that. So here's my advice. Number one, there are a wealth of resources these days, whether it's in your high school or on the internet, or one of the things that we did in San Antonio when I was mayor is we created something called Cafe College that is like this one-stop center for people to get free admissions and financial aid counseling. But find those resources. Put the time in to find those resources to understand sort of what to expect about the whole process of applying to college, and then also what to expect when you get there. For folks that aren't doing as well as they want to do, right? Colleges focus, when they analyze your application, on your years of high school, but especially your last 2 years of high school. And so, the way that I see it, every new semester, every new day really is a new opportunity to improve the trajectory of yourself academically. And so if you're not doing as well as you'd like to be doing, then go talk to somebody in the counseling office or talk to somebody that can offer or provide insight into how to change that. And I think that you'll find in most cases that you'll find a sympathetic ear, that you'll find people that want to help you do that. And let's say also that you're going to be a senior and you haven't, you've done okay, but you haven't done great in high school. And then next year, you end up going to a community college, right? That's great. There are a lot of people that do fantastic things because they got their associate's degree, and then they, in the working world, they work their way up. Or also who go to a community college and then they end up transferring from a community college to a four-year university. Don't ever write yourself out of opportunity just because you are at a certain point, because you can always improve that. You can always change that. I'm going to date myself and show how old I am, but I remember when there was an ad that Michael Jordan, the basketball player, used to do that said that it started with some line like that, if you're 18, that you haven't even lived a fourth of your life. That's true. That sometimes obstacles seem to be in the way that seem insurmountable, but y'all are going to be around a long time. You're going to have a lot of opportunity to change direction. So take advantage of that. All right.
Hi, I'm Mirka Sosa, and my question was, during the time you were running for office, did you face any challenges for being Latino yourself? And I had two questions, actually. My second question being, what was your biggest accomplishment while being mayor and serving for your city?
Yeah, and what's your name?
Mirka.
Mirka?
Mirka.
Mirka. Oh, okay. Thanks for the question. A couple of things. So I ran for mayor the first time when I was 30 years old, and I was trying to become the youngest elected mayor in the city's history. And I was running against a guy that was 70 years old, trying to become the second oldest in the city's history. And we had just had a Latino mayor for the first time in, I don't know, about 12 or 13 years, because there hadn't been that many. In about 140 years, there had been, I think, 3 in San Antonio. And so historically, I knew that generally it's hard to have back-to-back minority mayors. That doesn't happen very often for African Americans, even in African American majority cities, or for Latinos in Latino majority cities. And it's funny you asked that question, because a couple of days ago I was going through old emails and I saw this analysis that some scholars had sent me about my 2005 campaign that analyzed racial polarization in the voting. And so, yeah, I mean, I think in that moment, in that year, it was tougher than it might have been if it had been a few more years between, one Latino mayor to another. But I think also maybe the toughest thing was the fact that I was so young, and that I made a couple of mistakes during that campaign that played into the idea that I was that young and that maybe I wouldn't be ready to be mayor. And they were self-inflicted mistakes. So when I came back 4 years later, I had learned a good amount about how I could build a stronger coalition of people to win in the city, and also how to not make the same mistakes that I made the first time. And I think that the city was ready again, and Latinos were energized to support a Latino candidate for mayor. And so I think all of those things kind of work together personally, and then the dynamics of voting in the city. And then to answer your second question, in terms of what I'm proudest of, I got into public service because I wanted to make sure that other people could have the same opportunity that I'd had. And I had kind of a chip on my shoulder about San Antonio. When I was in college, I started to see that Bay Area had higher income levels and higher education levels, and it seemed more ready for the future. And I wanted to take some of that opportunity and create it for my hometown. And one of the linchpins of that was making sure that we improved educational achievement. So when I was mayor in 2012, we put before the voters something called Pre-K for SA, which was a sales tax initiative. We were asking the voters to tax themselves, to increase the sales tax by 1/8 of a cent, to significantly expand high-quality full-day pre-K in the city. Understanding that, the research is very clear that if there's a dollar that you have to spend on education, that it's best spent when children are very young and their brains are developing at their fastest, and you can really improve their path overall by investing in great education early. And in November of 2012, the voters approved it by 53%. And then my proudest day as mayor was in August of 2013 when we began the program and started taking in students of standing on the side, outside of one of the pre-K for SA centers on the first day as the 4-year-olds came forward with their parents, and some of the kids were crying and some of them were happy. Some of the parents were crying too. But just knowing that because of that, the chances were greater that they were going to fulfill their dreams. That's what I'm proudest of my time in public service, not just being mayor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hello, my name is Cheyenne Hunter, and I also have 2 questions. So my first question is, being that you went to school with your best friend and your brother, who did you pick for your roommate? Because that's kind of hard. And then my second question was, being that you were like first generation, not a first generation, but college or whatever, did you like being so far away? Like, what did you take back from college that you still use today, being that, Texas to California, that's kind of far, so.
Yeah, and, Shauna? Say Shauna? All right.
Just call me Shy.
Thanks for the question. Well, first, I guess for the second question first, what did I take away? For me, like I think for a lot of people, college was just a whole new world of people and of experiences that I'd never had before. When Joaquin and I showed up to Stanford, we had lived a pretty sheltered life on the west side of San Antonio. I'd been on an airplane, I think, like once before, and at Stanford, I remember them bragging about there being students from every single state and 37 different countries around the world. And so just meeting people from places and cultures that I had never would have had the opportunity to meet if I had just stayed at home. And also on top of that, of course, the education that you get. Remember in college, it's not like what y'all have now where you might have 7 periods in a day or 8 periods or whatever, and it's so regimented. You get to study what you want to study. So my brother and I both majored in communication and political science, and we had a passion about studying that, and I learned a lot, and it just opened a whole new world of ideas there. I think I just took an appreciation for learning, an appreciation for many of the ideas that I read about and heard the professors speak about, and then also a better understanding of different cultures and people and the perspective that they bring. I think when I went into college that, like a lot of people, I tended to see things more in terms of, like black and white, like there was either this or that. And there in college, I can remember basically understanding more how to see the shades of gray, not just in life, but also for what I did later in policy, And that I took from that something that was very useful as we tried to put policies together when I was in the council or when I was mayor or HUD secretary. And then I think your first question was about, roommate, yeah. It wasn't my brother, he's too messy. So my brother was never my roommate. I only had a roommate 1 year. And actually, the experience of my roommate was a cautionary tale for me because I had a roommate that was from the Valley of Texas. And his family had come from the farm working background. And he went to school. We lived in this dorm called Soto in the Wilbur complex at Stanford, and that was the only year that he went. He didn't come back after that year, and unfortunately, that happens. But it was also a lesson to me as the year went forward, and then especially after that happened into the next years, of how important it is to focus on, on your studies and the work, and that if you have this golden opportunity to really take advantage of it. Because the fact is that not nearly enough folks that come from the places that all of us come from in this room have those kinds of opportunities. And so don't let it pass you by. Like, make the most of it, no matter where you go, no matter what college you go to. All right.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. All right. All right, y'all. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a gift for you.
Oh, okay.
Can Janessa Schussler please come up? We have a token of our appreciation for being with us in the Academy. If you want to stand right here, we'll present you with that. Good photo opportunity. There you go.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. That's a lot. You made use of it? Thank you. Here,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Secretary Castro. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. All right. Well, we certainly thank you for your inspirational message of reminding our students to believe in themselves. I think that's an important message to take today and on to their future. So we thank you very much for instilling that with our students. We have our next generation problem solvers in this room, and it starts today as they work on their projects. So thank you for giving them that encouragement to believe in their potential and aspire to lead. So I know we're going to start opening the buffets here, so if we can please go with the front row, and they'll go ahead and go through the lines, and we'll start food here. And please continue to visit with your table host. They are here joining us today to encourage networking and ask them their advice on college and careers. So thank you very much for being with us, and we will continue with our lunch. Thank you.